So, you find yourself on the UnrealEntGaming channel. How fortunate for you. I, Lord Frieza, will spare your life as long as you subscribe and turn on notifications. Also, don't forget to become a member of UnrealEntGaming's Patreon for tons of exclusive content to early access media and much more. Do it now, or else.
So with our heroes now having to finally gain entry within Demon Realm number 1 and now having to finally come face to face and having to confront Gomah and Degisu, our heroes' mission to finally go as far as to restore the norm continues, as I want to welcome you all to my Dragon Ball Daima anime episode number 15 review, which ultimately picks up exactly where we had left off as the episode started exactly where episode 14 had ended, and that is essentially by having Gomah's henchmen try to do the most that they possibly could in taking down Glorio, Pansy, Goku, Vegeta, of course Piccolo, Bulma, and Neba, as it was only just with our heroes being shown getting behind some rocks and attempting to fire back. Interestingly enough, we do end up seeing how Goku ended up getting struck by one of the bullets, or at least one of the shots that was being fired, which inevitably had resulted in Goku seemingly being electrocuted by this, and the overall potency behind these attacks must be so strong to where it had ultimately resulted for Goku to stay down for the little duration that he did. But even after having to use his power pole, in knowing the fact that this battle wasn't going to be easy, because the exact same thing ended up happening to Vegeta as soon as Vegeta got into the middle of the fray, as he was hit and electrocuted similar to that of Goku, which kind of almost makes you beg the question as to how in the world did our heroes go from fighting the Tamagamis and actually being able to hold their own against them to now being shown being struck by mere lasers and getting electrocuted while down on the ground. It kind of makes you question the overall power scaling of things, but even then, I found it to be just as important to see Goku actually give Vegeta one of the bugs to recover his energy with, because we ended up seeing how in the beginning of Daima, Goku ended up collecting these bugs. One was meant for fusion, one was meant to recover strength and stamina, and so to see Goku go as far as to actually use this alongside Vegeta, I think was a very good call, although it was a little wacky to see in which the timing of things and having them use these bugs against mere henchmen like this was a little weird to see, because you would only expect to see them go as far as to maybe use these during the Tamagamis, which they didn't. But it was only shortly after, with Gomah having to see this, Gomah knew that he was in trouble, and so what did Gomah ended up doing? Well, Gomah ended up taking precaution because he knew that Goku and company were going to make their way on over to his castle inevitably, and so what Gomah's men ended up doing was sounding the alarms and letting everyone know that Goku, Vegeta, and company were now making their way ever so closer towards his castle, which only from that point had prompted Gomah in wanting to go as far as to use the third eye that was originally used by Abura, which of course is Deborah's father, which I will go as far as to say that the little flashback that they showed with Abura having to go as far as to use the third eye was really cool, because not only does this go as far as to add more lore for Dragon Ball, hopefully enough it goes further into connecting into Dragon Ball Super as well, because never once did we ever have any mention of a third eye or even what was happening within the Demon Realm, even though Dragon Ball Super came before Dragon Ball Daima. Hopefully enough they end up utilizing this concept, because it does seem as though the third eye does have a lot of importance within the Demon Realm in granting access to supreme levels of strength to whoever ends up wielding it. But it looks as though during some of the flashback sequences, in seeing as to how the third eye was so important within the Demon Realm and transitioning itself from Abura to Dabura, and of course essentially having it be lost, I found this little sequence to be a little interesting and quite fascinating in the idea of having to lose such a very important item here, because what we end up finding out here is that Hybis is the one that actually has the third eye around his belt, which he himself ended up accidentally finding and stumbling across, in thus having to place that on his belt. So this entire time, unbeknownst to everybody, including our heroes, we know and we've seen how Hybis actually has this around his belt, and because Gomah and Degisu were now able to spot this, they now have a better understanding as to what awaits them, because, well, simply put, if Gomah wants to go as far as to capture and utilize the third eye, then he has it right there within his disposal, because among that very group that he's trying so desperately to take down, Hybis is the one that actually has it, which shockingly enough, even as the episode carried on, I think what surprised me the most was seeing how Hybis ultimately ended up trading the third eye for just a weird looking silly hat to begin with, all the while as our heroes were running around trying desperately to make their way into Gomahs castle, which I will say was a pretty cool sequence, because even though everyone is miniature sized, it kind of gives off a sense of desperation on behalf of our heroes in doing what they can, or essentially try their very best to make their way ever so closer in order to get inside of Gomahs castle. So it was just as this was shown happening, it was only just as everyone was fighting and navigating through buildings, we then see how Hybis ends up coming across some woman, and coincidentally enough, not knowing what he had around his belt, he ended up trading this for the stupid hat that he was so mesmerized in seeing, which kind of gives way because we know that the individual that he ended up giving the belt to is ultimately just gonna give it to Gomah to begin with. So Hybis essentially ended up dooming everybody from the very start of this, because even while trying to make their way inside of Gomahs castle, with Hybis really not knowing much, he ended up giving away one of the biggest power buffs that he possibly could to just some random woman, all the while within that very moment everyone else is seemingly getting shot at. So I think that was a really cool sequence, because it goes as far as to show the level of incompetency from some of the other secondary characters in a way, you know, which also, speaking on top of being incompetent, we see how Dr. Aritsu was looking at the one-star ball. We also see at the same time how both Majin Du and Majin Ku were sleeping all while this was happening. So it only goes as far as to kind of give off sinister vibes, because she knows that Goku and company are essentially here to fight and retrieve that Dragon Ball, but it doesn't appear as though Dr. Aritsu has any care in the world in not only having to confront our heroes, but she also seems to be very, very confident in knowing the fact that no one's gonna stop her to begin with. So it was only soon after, when then going back down below and seeing as to how these giant tanks were starting to roll on in and paralyze our heroes, yes, it kind of makes you question at the same time on how essentially weak our characters have become while miniature sized, because there was a point in time where Goku went as far as to take on and dismantle the entire Red Ribbon army by himself way prior to the fact, right? Which you also have to consider in OG Dragon Ball, Goku was a lot weaker too, so to see them struggle against mere tanks and against just regular henchmen was a little weird, considering the fact on how this is supposed to take place after the events of Kid Buu being defeated, so we know that our heroes are able to overexert themselves in unleashing more power and even going as far as to transform, which they don't. But it was only just upon with Goku having enough towards the very end was when the action really ended up picking up pace, and this was probably like one of my favorite scenes throughout all of this, including having to see Pansy's father actually come by with reinforcements to help them, because it wasn't as though Pansy's dad was just sitting back and just watching everyone do their business. No, he actually ended up getting involved himself, which I think is a good thing for the secondary characters, because you want to have the secondary characters do something while at the same time elsewhere the primary characters are going off and handling their business, which was what they ended up doing towards the end of this episode. And we ultimately get to see that the moment Goku ends up transforming and essentially lighting the entire place up, which they should have done from the very beginning, which there was also a really cool shot of Gomah having to oversee these massive explosions take place, which he was ultimately having a heart attack with to begin with, because he knew that he was losing, he knew that his men were falling back, and so he had no other option but to do what he needed to do, which was when Degasu had came along and having to try to calm him down, and also kind of plotting behind the scenes at the same time as well, because it was only after the fact of Degasu being shown calming him down was where he made some sort of an expression that kind of also gives me sinister vibes as well, that maybe he's gonna end up betraying Gomah, who knows, right? But all in all, I will say that this episode was a whole hell of a lot more fun than last week's episode, and what I think this episode ended up doing really good was showing us the overall utilization and teamwork and effort that our heroes are willing to put in just to reach Gomahs castle. But even now, by the end of all of this, I want to go ahead and get your thoughts down in the comment section below about how you guys felt on Dragon Ball Daima anime episode number 15, and on top of letting us know down in the comment section below as to what is it you guys expect to see moving forward involving Gomah and company, because I'm going to go off on a limb and say that I do believe that the overall usage of the third eye is going to be undertaken by Gomah by the end of this series, because even though originally I had assumed that perhaps maybe Gomah was going to be kind of forgiven for his actions just because he doesn't appear to be someone that is taken quite seriously while within the demon realm, I'm starting to kind of shift my overall opinion about him from now, because I do firmly believe that it will be Goma who will utilize the third eye and having to go up against our heroes. But even then, now that we know that Dragon Ball Daima is set to end by the end of February, there are only just about a handful of episodes left before the overall finale. So with that in mind, let us know down in the comment section below as to what is it you guys expect to see moving forward as Dragon Ball Daima seems to now come to its end. As again, I want to thank you all so much for being here. As always, thank you all so much for watching, to which once more, if you also just so happen to be new to this channel and of course love Dragon Ball, then I do encourage for you all to head on over and smash that subscribe button, on top of making sure to give this video a big fat thumbs up by smashing that like button down below. Tune back in for more, and with all that being said, I want to go on ahead and thank you all so much for your time, and I'll be seeing each and every single one of you down in the comment section below and in the next video. Take it easy everybody, and have a great day. Peace.
Hello! Did you know that you can stay up to date with the latest Dragon Ball content by simply subscribing to UnrealEntGaming?
Also, don't forget to follow on these social media platforms, you sexy son of a bitch.
Roshi!
Silent Cell, me and the fans are having a moment. That's right. I know what you want. Extra long, thick Dragon Ball content. Quality reviews with flawless editing. Yeah, you like that, wouldn't you? You dirty bitch.
Roshi, the fuck?
God damn it, I need them to subscribe, Cell.
And we're demonetized.
Yeah, screw it. Let's cut to the video.